introduce to you our guest presenter, Chuck Frey. Chuck is the founder and author of the Mind Mapping Software blog, where he covers mind mapping and other forms of visual thinking. He's recognized as an expert by industry pundits on mind mapping and visual thinking. And in addition to his mind mapping blog, he blogs about creativity, productivity, and personal development strategies on his personal blog, chuckfrey.com. Chuck recently authored a new MindJet white paper that explores some of the big challenges facing today's IT project managers, and that's what today's webinar is based upon. Before I turn it over to Chuck, I'd like to mention that we will take questions during the presentation. I will be handling the questions, so if I can answer them, I will. Otherwise, we'll save up the questions for the end so that we can hear what Chuck has to say. So without any additional comments, let me welcome Chuck. Thank you very much for being here, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Welcome to the webinar, everyone. Can you hear me good? Just checking.
Yes, the people are raising their hands.
Fantastic. All right, thanks to MindJet for giving me an opportunity to work on this project. It was quite interesting talking to IT project managers about their use of mind mapping software. I learned a lot from these discussions, and I'll be sharing the best of what I've learned during the next 45 minutes. So here's the process I followed to conduct the research for this webinar and for the white paper. MindJet gave me the names of IT project managers from some of their largest enterprise clients. I conducted telephone interviews with them, and I questioned them about a variety of topics, which you see in this slide. And we wanted to get a sense of what their work really involves and the tools they use to manage it. Obviously, project management involves things like work breakdown structures, requirements documents, and Gantt charts. But what we discovered is that there's a lot more going on here as well. We wanted to get a sense for also what's changing in the nature of project management in these IT environments and how a visual approach using a tool like Mind Manager can help. So this is a high-level view of some of the changes in IT project management we discovered from these interviews. First, the velocity of projects is increasing. What we heard is that stakeholders expect to see results faster, and they're demanding greater accountability from project teams. This is due in part to tighter cost controls. Stakeholders want to make sure that problems are caught quickly before cost overruns have an opportunity to multiply out of control. Next, the era of the mega project seems to be over or close to being over. Because of the factors I just mentioned, stakeholders are demanding that large multi-year projects be divided into smaller ones that can be completed more quickly and for which the project team can provide more frequent reporting. In today's project management world, it's increasingly common for teams to be geographically dispersed. One of the MindJet customers I spoke with said it's common to have people from as many as 6 locations and several countries on a single GoToMeeting session. Teams need a project management tool that works well, not only within a meeting room with a physically present team, but also these virtual collaboration environments. Mind mapping software and Mind Manager specifically seem to be ideally suited for these long-distance collaboration, according to the people I talked to. Another common theme in my interviews was the need to communicate with a variety of stakeholders, ideally in the formats they're most comfortable with. In most cases, the stakeholders are not professional project managers, and that means many of them don't understand dense Gantt charts with horizontal lines and dozens of dependencies. For some stakeholders, a mind map is a great way to clearly show project status. A lot of people seem to naturally get this format. For others, project managers may need to output project updates in Word, PowerPoint, or Excel. Mind Manager, of course, can output to all these formats quite easily. Why does that matter? Well, one IT project manager put it this way. He said that communication with stakeholders and his team is 90% of what he does. The ability to do it well has huge implications to the success of projects, large or small, in my estimation. And then lastly, accelerating corporate changes such as reorganizations, mergers, and acquisitions can also play havoc with the best designed projects. This is another thing I heard from my interviewees. Several project managers said that Mind Manager helps them to roll with these changes, quickly reorganizing, reconstructing, and updating their project maps to accommodate these ad hoc changes. So what are the implications of these trends? First, it's clear that the classic enterprise project management software that's been used for years appears to have been designed largely for this mega project era, which is starting to go away. Many of the project managers I spoke with said that programs like Microsoft Project and Primavera are ponderous and inflexible, especially if you need to move large sections of project tasks around. What they were saying is they need a better tool that can help them to meet these changing needs, and mind mapping software in general, and Mind Manager specifically, seems to be the right tool for the times. Finally, one of the key findings from this project is that project managers use mind mapping software in many different ways, and we'll dig into more detail on those shortly. As the team at MindJet and I looked at the results of these fascinating interviews, we realized that IT project managers and the challenges they face tend to fall into three general categories: adaptability and agility, communications and visibility, and the proliferation of small ad hoc projects. And we're going to take a closer look at each of them. As I listened to the concerns and challenges of these IT project managers, it became very clear what they really need is a whiteboard tool that can flexibly capture the types of information you see on this slide. Mind mapping software works very well in these applications because of its high degree of flexibility and the ways in which you can actually visually classify information using things like shapes, colors, icons, resources, and other forms of metadata. And it's also easy to connect topics to ancillary pieces of information such as web pages, documents, and databases. So to frame our discussion of the ways in which IT project managers can benefit from mind mapping software, we decided to take a structured approach as we went through each of these three general challenges. So the format of this discussion closely follows that of the white paper. First, we talk about the trend, then the challenges it creates for IT project managers, and then the benefits of a visual approach like mind mapping software. In addition, I'm going to share some other notes of my conversations with these project managers that did not make it into the white paper, and these will provide you with additional context and understanding. So let's dig into our first challenge, which is adaptability and agility. In other words, the ability of a project management tool to adapt to changes in project scope, timing, and focus. Following the structure we just laid out a few minutes ago, we're going to start with the trend of adaptability and agility. First, the IT project managers I spoke with must gather and manage a greater number of projects, and they have to execute them faster, as we've heard. And as I alluded to earlier, these mega projects that tended to have long time frames in excess of a year also tended to generate cost overruns. And the executives at the C-level of many large organizations have been very concerned, of course, with cost containment in recent years. And so as a result, they've asked project managers to divide these large projects into many smaller ones and to provide them with more frequent updates on their progress. Another major trend starting to impact IT project managers is Agile. This method of software development is now being applied to many types of projects. Teams meet daily to discuss progress and problems and quickly devise actions to solve them. Progress is made in concentrated efforts called sprints. And this is a trend that we can expect to see more of in the years ahead. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, corporate structural changes can also have a big impact on projects. Things like reorganizations, mergers, and acquisitions are all becoming more frequent. And regardless, project managers are expected to adapt and keep projects moving efficiently. So what challenges do these trends create for IT project managers? First, most dedicated project management software, as we mentioned, was designed for a different era. They present project data in complex tables that can be hundreds of rows deep, and that makes it hard for non-project managers to understand. They also tend to hide problems because it's hard to see what might be missing, what may be duplicated, and what needs to be defined better. And of course, as you would expect, these problems won't just stay hidden. They'll rear their ugly heads halfway through the project. So what's needed is a nimble, adaptable project management tool that can help project managers adapt to these challenges. So in this evolving project management environment, what benefits does a visual approach like mind mapping offer? First, it makes it easier for teams to identify and solve potential problem areas quickly. Next, it enables project managers to create templates that they can use to speed the development of frequently used mind maps, such as meeting planning and project design. Mind mapping software can be a powerful tool at the front end of a project for brainstorming requirements, risks, resources, and more. Projected at the front of the room or within a virtual environment like GoToMeeting or WebEx, the mind map encourages involvement by team members and stakeholders. And the associative nature of the mind map structure makes it easy to keep the flow of ideas coming. So you tend to end up with a more complete project design process. Importantly, the ability to reorganize topics in a mind map becomes a huge plus for project managers. When you move a high-level topic in a mind map, all of the child topics beneath it in the structure and all the associated metadata that are attached to those topics move along with it. This makes the process of reorganizing project maps quick and easy. Next, the mind map format seems to be easier for non-project manager stakeholders to understand. I asked my interviewees if stakeholders tended to be comfortable viewing mind maps, because I know there's a great divide out there. There's people that just aren't comfortable with this visual format and those who are. But to my surprise, all of these project managers said yes, their stakeholders do get it. They do like the format. They intuitively get what they're looking at is a visual hierarchical outline, and they immediately see the relationships between all the project's elements. And that helps them more clearly understand the project's scope, risks, and status. Another big plus for mind mapping software is that it enables project managers to create dashboard maps. In other words, personalized mind maps that give them single-click access to all of the most important resources they need. A dashboard map can also be used to enable project managers to quickly switch between projects with a minimum of downtime. This is something I heard from one project manager in particular. And considering that project managers must handle a larger number of smaller projects, this capability is actually pretty important. In addition, mind maps make it easy for project managers and stakeholders alike to see critical data clearly. This includes things like task status, items requiring attention, resources, and responsibilities. And finally, mind mapping software supports the need to design and execute smaller ad hoc projects. In fact, teams can design and manage entire projects within Mind Manager. So before we leave the challenge of adaptability and agility, I just want to spend a few more minutes talking about how these ad hoc projects and how Mind Manager supports them. First, several of the project managers told me they use it to take notes during project meetings. This is especially valuable when working on agile projects where teams meet every day to discuss project status and solve problems. That generates a lot of information, and the mind map helps them keep organized. As I mentioned earlier, Mind Manager is a perfect tool for group brainstorming of small teams, whether they're in the same room or connected remotely. And finally, Mind Manager and other mind mapping programs enable you to add a wide variety of metadata to provide additional context and meaning to your project maps. And this slide lists many of these types of ancillary information that you can add to your topics. And finally, you have a forest and tree view. But what I mean by that is you can close up all the branches of your map and have sort of a 50,000-foot overview of your project. You can also open up branches any number of levels down and quickly zoom in to the details. And there really aren't many types of productivity software that enable you to do both those views. Usually software excels in one or the other, but not both. As I promised at the beginning of the webinar, here are some additional notes from my interviews with IT project managers. First, there's no question in their minds that mind mapping software speeds the development of project plans. And of course, they emphasize the ability to quickly reorganize project phases and tasks, which is a real plus for them. It saves them a lot of time. In one case, a project manager told me that the multinational corporation he worked operates a dedicated project management office, which he worked out of for several years. Its job was to serve as a resource center for project managers throughout the enterprise. Often it was called upon to rescue failing projects. This required him to kind of parachute into the middle of the project, quickly identify key stakeholders and team members, problems that led to the project getting off track, and then to develop action plans to quickly get it back on track. And he really praised the ability of the program to help him quickly take notes, organize his thinking, and formulate plans to rescue these floundering projects. Another recurring theme during my interviews was the ability of Mind Manager to accommodate these reorganizations and other corporate changes. And finally, I want to close with a direct quote from one of the project managers I interviewed. His comment about this whole process and about Mind Manager was that it helps us turn information to action. And I think that really says a lot about the power of this type of application for project management. The next challenge that IT project managers are facing today involves communication and visibility. I mentioned earlier that one project manager told me communications is something like 90% of his job, and we'll soon see why as we dig deeper into this challenge. So here are some of the trends we identified from my interviews. The challenges with mega projects and the reasoning behind dividing them into smaller, shorter time frame projects is something we've already discussed, so I'm not going to belabor that point. The bottom line is that these project managers have more projects to manage that require more frequent reporting. Their workload has increased. They need tools that can help them keep up. Top management is also asking project managers to bring greater rigor to these small project plans and execution. Whether or not these efforts actually help these organizations contain costs remain to be seen. The project manager who raised this issue with me is actually rather skeptical that'll ever happen, but the bottom line is it keeps the stakeholders happy, and that's what matters. We've also talked about geographically dispersed teams, which are becoming commonplace, remote collaborations becoming standard operating procedure at every organization today. So all of this means more work for project managers, and of course they need tools that can help them to anticipate problems, keep projects on track, and oh, by the way, keep all of their stakeholders happy in the process. Sounds like a pretty tall order. As I mentioned earlier in the webinar, stakeholders want to see project status updates in the format they're most comfortable with. That means they need a flexible tool that can output updates in a variety of format, and Mind Manager is definitely up to that task. And one project manager pointed out to me that although collaboration tools like GoToMeeting and WebEx have become the de facto tools for meeting with team members in other locations, these tools actually don't have a whiteboarding tool that can be used to facilitate brainstorming. GoToMeeting and WebEx enable you to display an existing document and mark it up on the screen, but they don't necessarily provide a blank canvas where you can capture and organize ideas. And in his estimation, Mind Manager fills that role very capably. Finally, project managers told me that they're collaborating with people not only within their organization, but there's also more frequent collaboration with outside partners, such as business and IT consultancies. And these companies could be anywhere in the world. So far in discussing this challenge, we've primarily focused on communications, but visibility is equally important. Project managers, as we've heard, need tools that enable them to identify problem areas, duplication of project elements, and those that are missing. And this visual format makes these problem areas much easier to spot. My interviews also talked about how powerful Mind Manager is as a planning tool for remote teams. They mentioned that the visual format in particular was quite engaging. They emphasized that Mind Manager and other programs like it enable them to project multiple views of project data. Mind Manager in particular has some very powerful filtering tools that enables you just to look at tasks, for example, or to use other criteria to filter down a very large map to something more manageable and meaningful. It also has a show branch alone command, which only shows the current branch as if it was the central topic of the map, and everything else is hidden for the moment. And the ability to view subsets of data within a larger project map, they tell me, keeps team members from getting too distracted by extraneous information. And it really helps them to focus in on one area of the project plan at a time, and that in turn helps them accomplish more in a shorter period of time. Another benefit of Mind Manager in the project environment is that you can easily convert topics to tasks and assignments, do resource leveling, and essentially turn plans into action. In addition, my interviewees reported that the visual format of the project map promotes shared understanding, and that in turn helps projects to run more smoothly. It's easier to see for team members to see what they're responsible for, and in particular how their tasks fit into the bigger picture. Finally, the ability to create customized dashboards enables project managers to be more productive, tackle information overload, and keep the right things visible and easily accessible. And that helps them be more productive and effective in their roles as project managers. Now it's time to provide you with some additional notes from my interviews that didn't make it into the white paper. First, the project manager I interviewed loved the fact that Mind Manager provides a common visual language for reaching consensus on project plans. Everyone could see more clearly the elements of the plan, how all the pieces fit together, and of course, as we've already discussed, that promotes shared understanding. As you well know, doing more with less is still a common theme in most businesses today. Mind Manager helps IT project managers work quickly and efficiently with all the information they need in one place. One project manager told me with the workloads he and his peers are facing today, they can't afford to have information scattered all over the place. They need a cohesive picture that can help them take confident action to keep projects on track and on budget. Another project manager mentioned to me that when overseas vendors get developed in IT projects, mind maps actually help to bridge the language gap. By presenting information in a visual format, mind maps help promote understanding, even if these far-flung teams may not speak the same language. If it's typical from what I've seen, a lot of people from overseas are more comfortable reading a foreign language than they are speaking it, so the maps are still understandable to them. Finally, effective communication with stakeholders is critical, and the IT managers I interviewed love how Mind Manager enables them to quickly output updates in a variety of formats, and that keeps their stakeholders happier. Our third and final challenge is the growing trend towards small ad hoc projects. By now, we've already talked about this issue of cost containment, breaking large projects into many smaller ones, and the need for frequent reporting. But what I really want you to take away from this slide is actually contained in the graphic toward the bottom of it. Instead of managing one big project, IT project managers must now manage many small ones, and this places much greater demands on their time and attention. By now, it's clear that today's IT project managers need an all-purpose project management tool that can help them do some of the traditional tasks like creating project timelines and tracking the status of tasks, but also brainstorming, taking notes, organizing and distilling information, and tracking budgets against actual spending. This is especially true of these ad hoc projects, which by their nature don't necessarily follow preset patterns. Each one is a bit unique. Finally, it's clear that traditional project management software is poorly suited to thrive in this type of environment because of the flexibility issues we've talked about. It can't, it does one thing extremely well, manage large projects. It's not meant to slam Microsoft Project or P3, but it's a single purpose piece of software. It can't accommodate the variety of information management tasks and needs that we've been talking about today. So once again, we see the same benefits of a visual approach. Mind mapping software is much more flexible, adaptable, and fluid, perfect for these ever-changing needs. They make it easy for project managers to gather, distill, organize, and share project information. And the intuitive visual format also makes it easier for stakeholders and team members to understand the current status of the project. Based on what my interviewees told me, Mind Manager is just the right size for these types of small projects. In contrast, they confirmed what we suspected, that these dedicated project management tools are overkill for small ad hoc projects. One final observation I found very profound. One of the project managers told me that when it comes to rearranging information in a project mind map, he experiences what he called very little psychic pain. I was intrigued, so I asked him what he meant. He explained that with Microsoft Project or even a Word document, if you think about it, we almost always hesitate before making a big change because we're afraid we might mess something up. Often this might cause us to not make a change that we really ought to make. And he told me he experiences none of this hesitancy when reorganizing elements in a project mind map. And that's a real plus, especially when the end result is a stronger, more complete plan. And finally, it's time to share with you some more project manager notes, those observations and insights that didn't make it into the white paper. First, my interviewees told me it's easier to see problem areas in the visual format of a mind map. Within a dense format of a complex spreadsheet, these problems tend to hide from view, but in mind maps, they're much easier to spot. Next, group brainstorming around projects is all about reaching consensus about project design, requirements, and other aspects of the project. And because all of the team members are able to see the underlying structure of the project clearly displayed on the screen in front of them and what they've contributed to that as they brainstorm, it helps them to reach consensus faster. Next, another fairly profound statement from one of the project managers I interviewed was that Mind Manager helps their teams make contextual-based decisions. This is something I hadn't really heard of, so I dug into it a bit more. And he said the decisions they're making aren't just made in isolation. The visual format of the mind map helps teams take into consideration related factors and information, and that ultimately helps them to make better informed decisions. Finally, one of the project managers I talked with is a huge fan of note-taking with Mind Manager. In this application, he finds it to be fast and efficient, ideal for the quick pace of Agile and these small ad hoc projects. Now we're going to switch gears and take a high-level overview of the many ways in which IT project managers use mind mapping software to be more productive and effective. And these are the applications we're going to be looking at in the next few minutes. First up is project brainstorming and planning, an area where Mind Manager really excels. My interviewee says it's ideal for brainstorming project scope and requirements. And as we've already talked about, by displaying the map on screen, teams can reach a shared understanding faster than any other way that they've experienced. In addition, they can see the results of changes in addition to the map in real time. As we've discussed, it provides efficient and effective whiteboarding for remote workers as well. When I asked some of these project managers what they would have used if Mind Manager didn't exist, a couple of them told me things like a whiteboard with sticky notes on it, and you have to move big batches of sticky notes around when you reorganize things, and also that method doesn't tend to lend itself as well to virtual participants. So Mind Manager meets a real need there. So project teams can add meaning and context to maps, as we've talked about earlier, by adding metadata to them, things like icons, shapes, colors, notes, and links. And finally, you can actually easily convert a mind map to a work breakdown structure or a requirements document. The important part is you can do this without having to reinvent the wheel. That's critical because in today's lean, fast-moving project teams, project managers don't have time to be reproducing different documents from scratch, all to meet different needs. All of the pieces have to work together quickly and efficiently. The next use of mind mapping software I want to highlight for project management is process management. Mind Manager enables you to create right-facing maps that can easily be used to depict a project flow. In other words, a mind map with all the topics that point to the right of the central topic. And essentially, the timeline starts at the top and proceeds to the bottom. In addition, starting with Mind Manager 16, you can now add flowcharts and process diagrams directly in the program. So you don't need to do those right-facing maps anymore. You can do something much more like a traditional process flow map. Building a requirements document is a common use of mind mapping software for project management. One of the reasons it works so well is because you can quickly capture information and worry about organizing it later. One of my interviewees told me it's a very good categorization tool. It helps teams make sense out of large amounts of information quickly. Another interviewee told me that the mind map format helps to minimize scope creep because it's easier for people to see what they're agreeing to be responsible for. And of course, it's up to the project manager to make sure that process doesn't get out of control. The mind map doesn't solve everything. And finally, because you can add many levels of detail to a mind map, it can easily be used to track very detailed information on each requirement, including such things as who owns it, how it will be validated, and who approves it. Of course, this level of detail isn't required on smaller projects, but on large, complex ones, it's very important. The next use we're going to highlight is a work breakdown structure, or WBS. It's a very common use of mind mapping software for project management. It works well in this application because it's designed to help you break the project into logical units. Each one can be converted into a topic and can be grouped and regrouped as needed, as we've heard. Resources can be attached to topics as well as numerical data. Once you have a complete WBS, you can easily convert it into a project schedule. Finally, when it comes to project management, you have two options. Smaller projects can be managed completely within Mind Manager, including Gantt charts, while larger ones can be exported to dedicated project management software like Microsoft Project. I was a little surprised at how often this application of note-taking came up in my discussions with the IT project managers I interviewed. Clearly, it meets a common need. Mind Manager makes it easy for them to categorize and group information they've gathered so they can make sense out of it faster. It's especially valuable for agile projects, as I said before, where teams meet daily and there's a lot of information generated. It's also useful for documenting meeting agendas, decisions, and responsibilities. And my interviewees told me that the visual format of a mind map makes it easy to scan your notes later and quickly understand what the key action steps are within it and what they need to pay attention to. Finally, it's easy to see how these meeting notes can be linked into a larger project map or dashboard, so you can keep all of these important bits of project information and background notes in a single location. And that's got to be a time saver. One of the most fascinating uses of mind mapping software by IT project managers, at least in my opinion, is the dashboard map. As you can see from this slide on your screen, you can easily create links to a wealth of resources and background information and keep it all a single mouse click away. This can make a huge difference in your productivity, as well as your ability to quickly switch between projects, as we talked about earlier. And as we've seen with the rise of these small ad hoc projects, this is a bigger need. In fact, I think the concept of the dashboard map is so important that we're going to spend a few minutes looking at an example I created especially for this webinar. So I'm going to ask you to bear with me for just a second while I switch from PowerPoint over to the mind map I've created. You should be able to see that on your screen, or it should be coming up shortly. This IT project dashboard map is actually loosely based on a discussion with one of the project managers I interviewed. We got on a GoToMeeting and he actually showed me what he does. And I kind of genericized it and kind of put my own spin on it. But this is a high-level view of the project dashboard map. All of the branches are closed, and I want you to notice that the first level topics on the right side of the central topic are focused on immediate action items, today's to-dos, and projects. Then on the left side of the map, I've arranged a series of topics and links that lead to supporting information, which you can also keep one click away in this type of mind map. I'm going to reposition it on screen here, and then we're going to start digging down into some of the details. If I open today's to-do topic, you can see there's a work topic with three I haven't formatted them as tasks, but I've just put priority codes on them, 1, 2, and 3. These are priorities that I need to work on in my role as a project manager. I could also add detailed task information to those, such as start and end dates, resources, and so forth, and percentage complete. And project managers also have lives outside of work. So as another branch within today's to-dos, I've got another branch called personal that lists some of the things that our imaginary project manager needs to take care of after work to keep everything copacetic on the home front. So let's collapse that. And now we're going to go into projects, which is where the real meat of this is. And I'm just going to drill down one level at a time. At this level, you can see that there's 4 topics: active, pending, completed projects, and archived. And for the first 3, I have used kind of a stoplight analogy with green, yellow, red. Green are the ones that I need to focus on now. Pending are ones that I may be waiting on information for, and completed are just what they sound like. For anything older, I have an archived topic here. And what my IT project manager who was showing me his dashboard map told me is occasionally you have to go back into these old projects, and you need to be able to find things quickly. You don't want to be hunting around for hours on network drives and folders trying to find the old project files. Well, you can actually create a link to the folder that contains all these files right here. And I've added another topic for key learnings, because in some organizations there's a debrief at the end of big projects where teams share what they learned so you can do it better next time. And now let's go into the active project here. You can see I've created 3 projects. Each one has an internal job tracking number. And I'm going to dig down into project number 2, which is the one I added details to. So what you see here are links to some other project maps for the WBS, the project map itself. Mind Manager lets you put spreadsheet cell ranges in there. I'm using that to keep track of my key contacts, my team members on this project. Very flexible that way, and I can collapse it so it's out of view. I can have links to folders for work statements, engineering work orders, project files. Some of the project managers I talk to are involved in testing. They may need to get at test procedures. Those may be PDF documents on their local drive or a network drive. They could be links to intranet pages. And one of the other interesting things about Mind Manager is it lets you do financial or numerical calculations. And in this case, I've created a budget topic with 4 subtopics, and I've just put some numbers in there for the sake of argument, showing budgeted and actual numbers for 4 different categories of IT project expenses. And one of the other neat things Mind Manager can do is let you set rules on these numbers. And for example, if a value in a certain cell exceeds a certain number, it could be formatted red. In other words, I need to pay attention to this. And as it rolls these numbers up to the top budget level topic, that's also formatted red. Again, it shows me what I need to pay attention to. It allows me to manage by exception. And I think that's very valuable. And then labor rates, this is an example of being able to create value pair data, if you will, where you've got a label and a value. And that just lets me keep track of this so I don't have to hunt for it whenever I need it. We're now going to collapse this side of our project and move over to the other side. As I said before, these are mainly pieces of support information. Admin, these are just things that you need as part of your day-to-day work. A company directory that links to an intranet page with everybody's phone numbers, email addresses, office locations, etc. Access to forums for travel expenses and engineering work orders, for example. These are links to actual Excel spreadsheets. Help resources for the programs that I'm using in my day-to-day work, like the Exchange server, Mind Manager, Project, SharePoint, all the things I'm responsible for. I did not build out this topic processes and procedures, but what's important to mention here is that most IT environments do have detailed processes and procedures, and you need to be able to get at those quickly. And instead of having them in a deeply nested folder structure somewhere where you have to go hunting or doing keyword searches, you can put links to them all within the structure of your dashboard map. Finally, reports. These could link to databases or to web pages or reports on your server. And then SharePoint. I know a lot of large corporations use SharePoint to provide shared environments for files and so forth. So I've just created a SharePoint topic with links to a project server and my Teams page on the SharePoint server. So what I wanted to do by showing you this example is just give you a sense of what's possible. And I'm just going to switch back to my PowerPoint once again. And go down 1 slide, 2 slides. All right, so I think this dashboard map is so valuable that in talking to the folks at MindJet, they've agreed that we should make it available for you to download and use. You can use it as a template. You open it as a Mind Manager file, and then you can customize it to your heart's content. You don't have to go with the topics that I've listed here. You can make it truly your own. And there is no wrong way of doing this. Consider it an iterative process. As you figure out what else you want to include in your dashboard map, add it. If something's not working as well, figure out how to reconstruct it or get rid of it. But make it your own. Make it work for you. And with that, I will send it back to the MindJet folks to open it up for questions and answers. Thank you very much for attending this webinar today.
Thanks, Chuck. That was great. Everybody, most of the questions I've gotten so far were about whether you were going to give a demo, which you did. Thanks, and I think everyone will be glad to get the map. Gary says, thank you, great presentation. Let me see if there are a few more questions for Chuck. One question is somebody who has it asking, what advice would you give to somebody who's just getting started with mind mapping, and what's the best way to learn how to use a new mind mapping tool?
Well, there's a whole range of mind mapping tools out there, and I'm not sure how far I should go into this because it's a MindJet event, but what you'll find is that the less expensive or free tools are very, very basic, just for gathering and organizing information. They don't have as much functionality, but if you truly want to manage projects, you do need a tool like Mind Manager. And the nice thing about it is that it doesn't have a big learning curve. And I know I'm saying that as somebody who's viewed as an expert in this, but you can get started with the basics right away. You don't have to be fearful of it and then kind of work your way into the other capabilities of it. Certainly, MindJet provides training resources to help you get up to speed. On my blog, I'm also creating training resources that are generic, not specific to one program, to help users of it understand what they can do with it and step-by-step how to do it.
Great, thanks. We've had a couple of questions about the white paper. If you want to download the white paper, if you go to the homepage of mindjet.com and scroll down a little bit, there's a promo box that where you can click to download the white paper. Also, about a lot of questions about, is the recording going to be available? Yes, it will be up on our website later today, and you'll probably receive a follow-up email from us, but that includes the link. But if you don't get it, you can go to the website later today. Under resources in the top menu, you'll see all the recorded webinars. And in addition to this one, there are a number that are kind of hands-on in terms of how to use Mind Manager. We have a question about how does Mind Manager interface with Task Manager software, and I'll answer that. Mind Manager does include APIs that let you, do custom work. Right now, the Mind Manager Enterprise version includes connectivity to SharePoint tasks, and there's syncing between Mind Manager tasks and SharePoint tasks. So if you're a SharePoint user, Mind Manager Enterprise is something to look into. Otherwise, it's mostly, at this point, cut and paste. It has been a frequent response to have integration, and we will have some news in a couple of months. Another question about MindJet resources, if you want to get a greater understanding. Yes, so we have a resources page. We also have the recorded webinars I mentioned, and we're going to be scheduling some more hands-on instructional webinars. The one's coming up on December 8th, and you'll be able to register. That'll be up on the website later today. Here's a question for you, Chuck. Can a mind map be linked to the dashboard mind map? For example, as he does other activities, he'd like to have the dashboard as one of the many activities. So can you talk a little bit about how to use the dashboard map to link to other maps?
Yeah, the linking capability of Mind Manager and other mind mapping software programs is pretty agnostic. It doesn't really matter if it's another mind map or a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet, whatever, it works the same way. So you can easily create networks of maps, and I know that Mind Manager has a capability too that if you're working on a map and its structure has gotten too complex, you can effectively break off part of it into a separate linked map. So it automates part of that process for you, so you don't have to manually create the link.
There's a question about how to use the new multiple screen capability, which I'll just go ahead and answer, which is that if you, when you open a map in, or multiple maps in Mind Manager 2016, if you look at the tabs at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a symbol, and you click on that symbol, it will separate that map, and then you can drag that map to another screen. So hopefully that helps. A comment is it can be cumbersome to share maps with others who don't have the software. It takes time to PDF the maps. I don't really have other suggestions at this point. Again, if you're a Mind Manager Enterprise user, We have a new reader that enables you to distribute maps, and they can be viewed by anyone, whether they have the software or not. If you're a regular Mind Manager user, then the best thing is to PDF it or save it as an image and distribute it that way.
I'd just like to add that MindJet did offer a interactive PDF export before, but its functionality was extremely limited, and now the new viewer for the enterprise software is quite a bit more functionality.
Let's see, can a single mind map be shared with others, and if so, can the nodes on the mind map be locked down on a permission basis? Again, if you are using Mind Manager Enterprise with SharePoint and you're using SharePoint to share maps, one of the advantages of that is that you can set permissions within SharePoint for who can access maps. It is not possible to lock down on a topic-by-topic basis. I think we're just about out of time, and anybody have, oh wait, here's, this is more of a tech support question, so I will ask them. So any other general questions about what Chuck has presented?
I'd just like to throw in one thing really quickly here. If you're on this webinar and you're totally new to mind mapping software and some of the terminology is a bit foreign to you, if you go to the home page of my blog and look for the brightly colored band at the top of the page, you'll see a link to an essential guide to mind mapping software that has a glossary, and it kind of explains chapter and verse what this is about, and from a business standpoint, why it's advantageous to be using this type of software.
There is a question about what platforms are supported. So primarily Windows and Mac. There are mobile apps that are, but it's a difficult, especially phones are a difficult format for mind mapping, so we recommend either the Windows or the Mac, and both are, when you buy Mind Manager, both the Windows and the Mac are included. Okay, I think we're going to wrap it up. So thank you so much for attending. Chuck, thank you very much for the white paper and this webinar. It was great, a lot of good information. And we hope some of you will come to our website and look for resources in Mind Manager. There are many templates, and that's a great way to get started. And sign up for future webinars that are instructional, where we'll walk through step-by-step how to get started using Mind Manager for project management. Thanks, everybody, and thank you, Chuck.
You're
Bye-bye.
welcome. Bye.